Hi, welcome back. Now, yes, we have done quite a few introductions about like the VS Code from Gitpod. We've also looked at DBT, the work environment. We also did talk about the DAGs, which is also very important. We also have somehow come to the realization why we need to, automate our transformations, what the benefits are. And so now one last part we will have to go over before we start developing is Git. Now, so far in the beginning of the course, we basically went to our GitHub and created our repo. Right? We created the repo, the DBT repo, which we plan to use, right? It's this one. It's essentially this DBT repo. This repo is what we plan to use for our DBT project. And somehow we have not yet somehow done anything to this repo. Of course, we have been creating folders, but the folders never got back to the repo. So now we're just going to look at a few commands of how we can sort of share our work back in the repo, because then it's important, especially when we're working like in a team, generally it's very important to use a repository, so that everybody can have access to the document. It's supposed to be like the whole company's document. This partition belongs to us privately, and so nobody can access it. And we cannot have some sort of simultaneous development. Now, a few things to take note of. You would have noticed that a few, think like there has been this number that is sort of coming up under the source controls. Now, it basically means that we have around 12 changes that we have most likely created since we last, saved back into GitHub, repo. So this is basically like 12 changes from the previous state of our repo. That's what it basically means. Now, we need to sort of add changes back into our repo. And one strategy that we can potentially use is, makes it easy. One of the easiest ways to do it is to come here, click this part, right? And then basically add. Of course, we don't need to add the git ignore back. We just basically, of course, we could basically add the git ignore because it's like the first time actually. So we could put the git ignore, we could put the DBT project YAML file, the README file for that. We could come here and put the git keep is important. These files, unfortunately, we're going to delete them because we don't want them, because they're just sample files. So we wouldn't add them to our DBT procedure. And then the schema YAML file also, we will create our own new schema YAML file based on what basically works for us. So we could just leave that for now. Just add the other git keep. This git keep essentially are folders that we need in our DBT repository that we don't have any files yet in them. So here we just basically say, okay, maybe we then, before we commit is the process where we sort of like, okay, so now we have added all the files that we need to move to our GitHub repo. Then we commit the files. So we say, okay, we agree that these are the files that we want to add. And so basically we would commit using a certain comment. So we could say, we're committing this by saying, okay, first, let's say we call it the first commit. Usually you put a commit to basically give an idea of what you're doing. And then we can commit. Yes. And then, of course, after committing, we would need to push. So it's just a process of add, commit, and push. And these files will show in your in the remote repository, which is essentially the one on GitHub. So then we have done the git, we have done the add, we have done push, and now we are supposed to do the commit. I think there is a way that we can sort of commit here. So we just basically come here. So we can sort of push. Now, these are two arrows. This down arrow basically says that we are pulling. Now, when we are pulling from GitHub, what it means is that sort of getting the latest, right? Remember I said this repo be sort of can be a lot of people working in the same repo at the same time. So at times someone might update repo while you're doing your own work. And so at times you might want to pull the repo so that you get the updates. And then of course, you can, when you have your own update, you push it into the repo. So all the files we have committed will go straight into the repo. Now, of course, there's still some things that we are doing wrongly, but I wouldn't yet go into that. Normally we do not work in the main branch. So this is like the branch called the main branch. We don't usually work in the main branch. Now we are doing that at the moment. And so basically we would essentially push. Gitpod doesn't want to push directly into the DBT repo. It wants us to sort of like, have to create a fork because it doesn't have the permission to push directly to GitHub. So we could either decide to create the fork or we can go and give the permission. So this is one thing we could look into and go to the settings and basically try to see if we can get some sort of permission to allow Gitpod push. Of course, it's also fine for us to just fork it, and we know that just a moment. So essentially, we will just fork it for now. So I will put all the commits that we have, and it will tell us to the fork. Okay, this is where we set grant the permission. So perhaps we can just open the access control. Yes, and then basically allowed to give like the permissions. So we come to edit the permission. We can read. We can give like almost all the permissions, right? And then we update the permissions, and then we authorize a pod.io to do, and then we log in just to confirm that we are actually supporting this, and it's not just a stranger that is trying to do this on our behalf. And so now we have like almost all the permissions that basically allows us to go ahead to do the push. And so now we can potentially push all our commits into the repository. Now, note that normally we're not supposed to be working on the main branch, but this is just the first example. In the future development, we would be creating a branch before we before we do any sort of commit. And why do we have to do that? We will explain as we go along with development. Thank you.